Hi, this is Dr. Cindy Banyai, Democratic candidate for U.S. House of Representatives, Florida 19, and this is Perspective on Lee Pitts Live. This episode, we're going to be talking about why it's so dang expensive for everything right now. As a working class mom, I know what it's like to manage your household budget to make ends meet. We have seen costs rise quickly over the past year, causing challenges and shortfalls in our family budget. In this episode of Perspective, we will look at the rising costs and discuss how they affect families like ours. We will look at the facts about inflation and what can be done about it. What is inflation? Inflation is the increase of prices over time. It indicates the purchasing power of our money, essentially how far our money will go compared to the past. March's inflation rate in the United States was 8.5%. This rise is being driven by energy costs that are rising because of Russia's war in Ukraine. According to the Consumer Price Index from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, costs for gas are up 48% since last year. Again, Russia's war in Ukraine is causing pressure in energy markets and raising costs. U.S. is already a net energy producer, which means that we are currently producing and drilling gas and oil. Opening new drilling operations right now would not affect our costs today. Politicians advocating otherwise are speaking on behalf of big oil donors. Grocery prices are rising too. Meat, poultry, fish, and eggs are up 13.7%. Cereal and bakery products, 9.4%. Fruit and vegetables, 8.5%. Dairy products, 7%. These rises in costs mean that a family of four spending $200 a week as a grocery budget is paying about $20 more per week than last year. And families paying about $100 a week in gas are now paying $150 a week in gas. With so many families in Southwest Florida living on tight margins already, these are major hits, forcing some to make tough decisions. Housing prices are also surging across the country. 32% of people are looking to move to more affordable housing locations, including Florida, and that's driving up our local prices. Rents across the country are up 4.4%, and the average for a 3-bedroom rental here in Lee County is over $2,300 per month. The overall price of gas, food, and everyday items is increasing at a faster rate than it has in the past 40 years. Prices accelerated in the late 70s and 80s because of oil shocks and limited policies to ease these prices. The main cause of today's inflation has remained the same for the past 2 years. Supply chains are not keeping up with the consumer demand from the disruptions and anomalies from the COVID-19 pandemic. All these rising costs are hurting Southwest Florida families. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the median household income in Lee County is $59,608. This means the median monthly income is about $4,967, and there are many who are living on much less. Spending 25% of your income on housing is considered sustainable. So, for the typical household in Lee County, that would be about $1,242. The average rents here now are nearly double the sustainability level. If a family of four is paying $2,300 a month in rent and $880 a month in groceries and $600 a month in gas, that leaves only $1,187 for everything else, including clothes, cleaning products, health insurance, etc. We know this is a crisis for families, and we expect our leaders to do something about it. So, what do we need to do now? And what do we need to know? The good news is our economy overall is strong. Unemployment recovered from a high of 14.7% in April 2020 and is now at 3.8% as of February 2022. Our economy is expected to continue to grow at a rate of 3.3% throughout this year as well. Inflation is a complex result of the economic disruption from the pandemic, shipping issues, rising fuel costs, and supply chain issues. Inflation is also happening all around the world. Britain is at 7%, very close to the United States' 8.5%, and they are at a 30-year high for inflation, whereas Nigeria is at 15.9%, for example. The U.S. inflation rate is higher than other OECD nations, other developed countries and economies, according to the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco's economic research. This was due in part to the fiscal stimulus in the U.S. that was higher than other countries. But without it, the U.S. would have experienced deflation and families would have suffered more. The choice was made to help people directly, knowing that costs may rise. Otherwise, the economy would have contracted, causing further job loss, recession, and pain for families. The American Rescue Plan and the CARES Act supported families and businesses, and blaming support for families for inflation is bad politics. Congressional Democrats and President Joe Biden chose to put the well-being of families first over contraction and chaos that would have happened otherwise. During the pandemic, the richest have gotten richer, causing major booms for them and a distortion in the economy. The wealth of American billionaires increased 57% since the beginning of the pandemic. The number of American billionaires rose 15% to 704. Elon Musk himself's wealth grew 851% during the pandemic, going from $24.6 billion to $234 billion. And according to ProPublica, he paid $0 in federal income taxes last year. How much did you pay? We can see we have a major problem here. The Federal Reserve helps to manage our economy. The President and Congress have little power to swiftly affect the economy outside of fiscal policy, like the stimulus that came from the CARES Act and the American Rescue Plan, which we already saw in our bank accounts. The Federal Reserve, otherwise known as the U.S. Central Bank, has the power to create policy that can more quickly manage the economy through federal lending, interest rates, and currency, otherwise known as monetary policy. The Fed raised interest rates to cool off the economy and lower inflation. This means that the money that the Fed loans to banks is slightly more expensive, and they in turn raise their borrowing interest rates on businesses, making it more expensive for them to borrow. P.S. Did you know that the government just creates the money it loans to banks? The U.S. economy is based off of the strength of our creditworthiness and our government's ability to loan out money to the banks, so they can make loans to invest in our business to keep our economy strong. We can make almost anything happen because of the strength of our economy. We need affordable housing policies and incentives. Southwest Florida leaders have known for years about the housing crisis and have only made feeble attempts to address it. Local leaders, including county commissioners and city council members, prioritize profits of developers and builders over affordable housing for our workforce. This lack of political will to act, including subsidizing affordable housing, making multi-unit zoning easier, and otherwise incentivizing mixed-income residencies, has resulted in an abundance of luxury housing and working families being forced to the outskirts of our community. There is no quick fix to this issue, and we will see people leaving the area, becoming homeless, and further disruptions in our workforce. A gas tax reduction, wouldn't that be nice? Instead of playing culture wars in Tallahassee, our state legislators should have been solving problems for everyday Floridians and using the cash influx from the American Rescue Plan to ease the burden on families, like reducing the gas tax. Furthermore, don't let big corporations off the hook. Many big corporations are seeing record profits. Nearly 100 of the biggest U.S. publicly traded companies booked 2021 profit margins that were at least 50% higher than their 2019 levels. Companies are using that to cover rising costs and prices, calling it inflation. This is because we have less competition for these companies. 75% of all American industries have become more concentrated in the last 2 decades. Most are now dominated by a handful of corporations that coordinate prices and production. This is true of banks, broadband, pharmaceutical companies, airlines, and meat packers. Less competition means more companies don't have to have competitive pricing, and the consumer loses out because there is no market to balance things. We need more antitrust action to protect customers. Byron Donalds, our current representative, put forth a bill to eliminate the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, just so you know where the mind of our representative is. However, ultimately, we need to elect officials who put people first and not the corporations and the wealthy. Thanks for listening in to this episode of Perspective on Lee Pitts Live. I'm Dr. Cindy Banyai, Democratic candidate for U.S. House of Representatives. Now back to Lee Pitts Live.
Lee Pitts Live is a Lee Pitts Enterprise production.
Hello everybody, this is Lee. I'm so glad that you watched that particular show, and if you enjoyed that show, we got other shows like that. Just subscribe to our YouTube channel, watch Lee Pitts Live on demand anytime, and also hit us up on all our social media platforms. Just type in Lee Pitts Live, and there you go.